48 hours and counting. You can almost taste the Premier League right now. It's going to be a fantastic season, Albert, Sarah. Players to watch. It's interesting, right? Because every year there'll be someone that emerges from nowhere. There'll be some superstar that becomes a talking point. Sarah, let's ask you to begin with. Who is your player to watch in this year's Premier League?
I have to just shed some light before I dive into who I'm picking.
Oh, here we go.
To Julian Alvarez, because I mentioned him last week when we were talking about top scorer and whatnot.
Oh, yeah.
But the game, Liverpool and Man City, I mean, we saw Haaland absolutely butcher his chances. But Alvarez got on the board, and he's so young, and I just think he's not going to be the top scorer. He's definitely, like, he might not even, I don't know what City are even going to win this year. They're so good, but they like to choke in the Champions League. But I think he is going to be somebody to keep your eye on. So
the minute I saw him score,
I thought
here
the
we
same
go.
thing. Yeah.
Here we go.
Well,
Ferrari is going
right.
to be all over that next week.
I was right.
I didn't watch him play before at River, but when he came on, what a difference. He's fast. He can score. He does everything. He beats players.
Shed light to the South
But once again,
Americans.
playing time, right?
Yeah, no, we'll see. But no, the player I am picking to watch is Elanga, Manchester United. 22 years old. He played 14 games last season. Played pretty well. He had that brace against Brighton last year, which was kind of like his, opening debut. Depending on how Sancho does, I think he might be able to slide in there because Manchester United, we're not really sure about what their lineup is going to be. I think that's the biggest thing. Playing time comes into this as well, but depending on what Ten Hag goes with their lineup, he could play and he could do really well. And he's super young, so I think he was really good to watch last year, and I think he's coming into his own more. Already have played with the team already for like one season, so I think he'll be really fun to watch because he's a talented young kid as well.
I think he has a spot in that 4-3-3, right? You're gonna have Sancho on the left, Ronaldo maybe, or Martial in the middle, and on the right side, I think that's his. So I think he's going to get a substantial amount of playing time. It depends what he's going to do with it. But he scored some big goals. He scored one in the Champions League as well. So he's obviously a player who can score goals, and I think he fits right into that Ten Hag 4-3-3 system. You have a winger who can play in multiple positions.
It's fascinating because no one's mentioned Marcus Rashford, right? And when he fits in that scenario, he was so poor last year. Whether he was distracted, I don't know what it was, but the kid's got so much talent.
I completely just dismissed him there. I almost forgot
Yeah,
about it.
no.
I mean, we haven't mentioned, of course, Mason Greenwood, who's probably out for another season. We don't know what's happening there, of course, but another young player who had a great start to last season before, obviously, the scandal broke. But there's good young players on that team. There's a lot of reliance on youth, though. That's a problem. And like you said, we don't know what Ten Hag's team's going to look like with Eriksen and Fernandes.
Yeah, and you're relying on bounce-back seasons from multiple players. You're hoping Sancho can figure it out in the Premier League. He kind of did in the second half. You're hoping Rashford can bounce back. Martial, you're hoping he can score goals if Ronaldo leaves. Donny Van de Beek, you're hoping that he can have a resurgence in his career under Ten Hag.
Harry Maguire.
No, stop it.
No,
I tell you what, there's way too many question marks around that team right now, isn't there?
But that's also why I think maybe the young guy will actually have a spot here, because all these other guys that you've mentioned, they've already had chances. Not to say that they shouldn't get 3, 4, 5, 6 chances, Anthony Martial for goodness sakes, but I do think that he's gonna have a spot and he's gonna be really great to watch.
It's a good pick, yeah. I like it. Albert, who's the one that you're watching?
Jack Grealish. I just feel he's a £100 million player, but forget about the money. He's a very good player, and he was excellent when he was at Aston Villa, one of the best players in the Premier League. You don't just lose that. And time again, when these players go to Manchester City, there's always this adjustment period. It happened with Bernardo Silva. It happened with Riyad Mahrez. It happened with João Cancelo, who's probably one of the best fullbacks in the Premier League, if not in the world at the moment. Grealish had a tough season last year, but I think coming into this season, it should be a lot different, and he's going to have a lot more playing time. Raheem Sterling is now out. Gabriel Jesus, 2 players who can play on the wing. Now he can occupy that position, play on the left side. And we've seen Pep use him a lot in the preseason. And he's been really good. Back to the old Grealish, getting the ball, beating players, getting fouled a ton, and also now linking up with Erling Haaland. He's going to be that type of player who can beat players on the wing to get it into Haaland. And I feel like just watching him in preseason, and I'm not big on preseason, but he just looks really good. He looks like he's in form already. And if you look at his numbers from last season, just 3 goals and 3 assists and about 26 appearances. Not very good. With that said, he still was up there in terms of key passes. And I know you love these types of stats, James. But key passes, he was top 10 in the Premier League with 2 key passes a game. And for those of you who are not familiar with that, it's the final pass that leads to attempt on goal. And when he can do that with limited playing time, imagine if he's in form playing full games and playing the majority of the
Like
Premier League season.
consistently.
Exactly.
With Haaland on the other end of
and
it.
with Holland on the other end. So I'm looking forward to Jack Grealish and what he can bring to this team. I think it's going to be a really big bounce back year for him.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, this guy is way better than we saw last year. Had
Yeah.
its flashes, obviously. It is a World Cup year, though, of course, as well. And if England have a good World Cup, that might not be great for Grealish. Imagine if they win the World Cup.
No, that's
really bad for
blasphemy
Grealish.
now.
Really bad
Oh.
for some party, right?
Yeah.
So this
And
guy
that's the
will.
thing, he gets a lot of slack for what he does off of the pitch, and it's understandable, right? He's always in the spotlight. He's an English player, but what he does on the pitch is fantastic. What he did with Villa, 6 goals and 10 assists in his last season there, the most fouled player in the Premier League. If you become the most fouled player in the Premier League for Manchester City in those goal-scoring positions, it's only going to help the team.
And frankly, he enjoys himself. Who cares?
Yeah, he's having the
He
best
He doesn't get
time.
in trouble necessarily.
No,
I think he's a good
he
dude.
has. He's done some stupid.
Well, here and there. I mean, who hasn't?
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think it's a good pick as well. I'm going for Conor Gallagher, of all players. If you watched Palace last year, he was the talisman. He was the maestro. He did everything for that team. And all this time we're thinking, where's he from? Oh, yeah, Chelsea. He's a Chelsea player on loan. They've got so many players on loan. He's back in pre-season with the club. He said he wants to try and make an impact at Chelsea this year. They might still loan him back out. I know Palace really want him back. Regardless where he's playing, whether it's Palace or Chelsea, this kid could be really special. He wants to push for an England World Cup spot as well. He does things in the midfield that we haven't seen from English midfielders for a very long time. Playing in that central position, can put his ball in the foot, foot on the ball, spread it around. He's got great pace as well. He's got that charisma on the pitch. I think he's a fantastic footballer. And what we saw last year at a pretty good Palace, a surprising Palace, it might be the best thing for him to be loaned back to Palace, because obviously in that position right now at Chelsea, Mason Mount might be in that position. You've got Jorginho, of course. There's depth there, but Thomas Tuchel wants to make some noise this year and some changes, and I think by keeping him around and giving him some minutes will be a great idea. So
Palace really missed him. Palace really missed him in the League Cup final against Chelsea when he wasn't allowed to play because of that
Ridiculous.
stupid rule.
Yeah.
If you're on loan, you can't play. And Thomas Tuchel was talking at that time. He's like, yeah, it's unfair, but it's more an advantage to us because he's such a good player. And Tuchel's talked so highly about this guy. So hopefully he gets some playing time in the midfield. But I think for him, like you said, James, it's best that he goes back out.
Yeah, I was just gonna say the same thing. Like, would you rather see him go back there because he's gonna have that playing time and ideally like come through and be playing every
minutes
game?
for young players, everything,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
getting into the England squad, it might be the best thing for him in the end. But maybe he just tears it up the next couple of weeks for Chelsea. And he sticks around. Who knows? Listen, we'll revisit this in a few weeks' time, and there'll be some kid out of nowhere, right? Who we're saying, how did we miss out on him? Always happens, but that's what makes the league so interesting.